everyone sat down, the lawyer began to read the will. Suddenly, Tony entered the room. Gasps filled the air, and everyone looked shocked. His mother and Ella ran away at first, but Tony called them back. How could you do this to Linda and my children?
See you, my heart, baby. A lady of all men's dreams. You be the one where they make me the Buddha.
Hey guys, have you ever wondered what your family and friends would do if you suddenly weren't around? It's a thought many of us have had at some point. Imagine faking your own death just to see how the people you love and trust treat your family in your absence. This is exactly what Tony did. Today, we are diving into his story, a gripping tale of deception, betrayal, and ultimate redemption. But before we get started, please take a moment and like this video and consider subscribing to the channel for more thrilling stories just like this one. Meet Tony. Tony grew up in a small town nestled in the heart of the countryside. His home was a modest wooden house surrounded by fields and a few scattered neighbors. Despite the simplicity of his surroundings, Tony's early years were filled with warmth and affection. Tony's father, Mr. Ben, was a hard-working man with calloused hand and a gentle smile. He worked long grilling hours at the local factory, often returning home late at night. But no matter how tired he was, he always had time for his children. One of Tony's fondest memories was of his father lifting him high in the air, spinning him around until they were both dizzy with laughter. Mrs. Ben, Tony's mother, was the heart and soul of the family. She had a knack for making the most of what little they had. She would sew clothes from old fabrics, patching and mending until they looked almost new. Her kitchen always smelled of homemade bread and hearty stews, and she had a way of turning the simplest ingredients into delicious meal. Tony's sister, Ella, was 2 years older and fiercely protective of her little brother. The two siblings were inseparable, spending countless hours playing in the fields behind the house. They would imagine themselves as pirates, sailing the high seas, or brave explorers, discovering uncharted lands. Their bond was strong. As Tony grew older, he became acutely aware of his family's financial struggle. He saw the lines of worry etched into his parents' faces and felt the weight of their sacrifice. Determined to help, he started working odd jobs after school. He mowed lawns, delivered newspapers, and did anything he could to earn a bit of extra money. By the time Tony graduated high school, he had saved enough to start a small business. It was tough going at first. Tony spent long hours working, often late into the night, driven by a fierce determination to succeed. His hard work paid off, and over time, his business grew. What began as a humble venture blossomed into a multi-million-dollar company. Tony's success brought profound changes to his family's life. They moved into a large, beautiful house in an affluent neighborhood. Mr. Ben retired from the factory, his hands finally free from the burdens of manual labor. Mrs. Ben could indulge in small luxuries she had never dreamed of, and Ella went on to pursue her passion for art, enrolling in a prestigious art school. "Tony, we are so proud of you," his mother would often say, her eyes filled with tears of joy. "You've given us a life we never dreamed of." "Thanks, Mom," Tony would reply, hugging her tightly. "I did it for all of us." One day, Tony attended a charity event that his company was sponsoring. The event was held in a grand ballroom filled with well-dressed guests and adorned with sparkling chandeliers. Among the volunteers was a beautiful young woman named Linda. She had a kind smile and an air of genuine warmth that immediately drew Tony to her. "Hi, I'm Tony," he said, extending his hand. "Nice to meet you, Tony. I am Linda," she replied. Her smile lightened up the room. Linda's kindness and intelligence captivated Tony. They began dating, and it wasn't long before Tony realized he had fallen deeply in love with her. Linda wasn't interested in his money. She loved him for who he was. She supported his ambitions and shared his dreams. And her presence brought a new sense of joy and fulfillment to his family. After a year of dating, Tony proposed to Linda. He chose a beautiful spot by the lake where they had shared many happy moments. "Linda, will you marry me?" Tony asked, kneeling on one knee with a ring in his hand. "Yes, Tony, I will," Linda exclaimed, tears of happiness streaming down her face as she embraced him. However, not everyone was as thrilled about their engagement. Tony's mother and sister Ella were wary of Linda. They saw her as a threat to their comfortable lifestyle and believed she was only after Tony's money. "Tony, are you sure about this girl?" his mother asked one evening. "We don't know about her. Mom, I love her. She's not after my money. She loves me for who I am," Tony replied, frustration evident in his voice. "But Tony, we have to be careful. You work so hard for what you have. We can't let someone just walk and take it away," Ella added, echoing their mother's concern. Tony was caught in a difficult position. He loved Linda deeply, but he also cared about his family's opinion. Despite their reservations, he went ahead with the wedding, hoping that in time, his family would come to accept Linda. Unfortunately, acceptance never came. Whenever Tony was away on business trips, his mother and Ella would mistreat Linda. They would give her extra chores, criticize her every move, and sometimes even take away things she needed. One evening, when Tony was out of town, his mother approached Linda with a stern look. "Linda, you need to clean the entire house today," she demanded. "But Mom, I just cleaned yesterday," Linda replied. "Madam, are you really talking back at me? Just do as you are told." Tony's mother snapped at her. Another time, Ella found Linda in the kitchen making dinner. "What are you cooking?" Ella asked, peering over Linda's shoulder. "Just some pasta for dinner," Linda replied. "That looks terrible. You are going to poison us in this house one day with your cooking," Ella sneered, pushing the pot off the stove. Linda tried to tell Tony about the mistreatment, but his mother and sister always had a different story. "Tony, your mother and Ella are making my life miserable," Linda cried one night after Tony returned from a trip. "Linda, I don't know what to say. They told me you are the one causing the problem," Tony said, torn between his wife and his family. Years went by, and Linda gave birth to twins, a boy and a girl. The arrival of the twins didn't stop the maltreatment. In fact, it intensified. Ella and Tony's mother wanted Linda and the twins out of the picture more than ever. "Look at these children. They are nothing but a burden," Ella whispered to her mother one day. "They are just another way for Linda to tie Tony down," her mother replied. Linda felt isolated and alone, but she remained strong for her children. "Tony, I can't take it anymore. They treat me and the kids like we are nothing," Linda confided in him one evening. "I don't know what to do, Linda. I love you, but they are my family," Tony replied, feeling helpless. Tony noticed the growing tension and confided in his best friend Mike. Mike suggested a drastic solution. Tony should fake his own death to see how his family would treat Linda and the children in his absence. "Are you crazy, Mike? Fake my own death?" Tony exclaimed. "Think about it, Tony. This is the only way to see the truth. You will know who really cares about you and your family," Mike explained. Though hesitant, Tony agreed to the plan, hoping it would reveal the truth. Tony arranged a fake accident with the help of a doctor who created a realistic replica of him. The news of Tony's death devastated his family. Linda Linda was the most affected, heartbroken, and unsure of how to cope with her loss and care of the twins. Tony, no, this can be happening, Linda sobbed, clutching her children. After Tony's funeral, his mother and Ella showed their true colors. They sent Linda and the twins out of the big house, taking away the car keys and the shop keys Tony had given her. You have no right to stay here. This house belongs to the family, Tony's mother declared coldly. But where will we go? Linda pleaded. That's not our problem. You can figure it out, Ella sneered, snatching the car keys from Linda's hand. Linda had to squat with a friend, struggling to provide for her children. Tony watched from afar, heartbroken by the treatment of his wife and kids. This isn't right. They promised to take care of Linda and the children, Tony thought, feeling the weight of his decision. Tony decided it was time to reveal the truth. He instructed his lawyer to gather everyone for the reading of his will. On the day of the reading, Linda was made to do all the house chores and wasn't even given food for her children. They treated her like a servant, asking her not to dirty the sofa. As everyone sat down, the lawyer began to read the will. Suddenly, Tony entered the room. Gasps filled the air, and everyone looked shocked. His mother and Ella ran away at first, but Tony called them back. How could you do this to Linda and my children? Tony demanded, his voice filled with pain and anger. I trusted you to take care of them, and you treated them like death. Linda wailed, tears streaming down her face. Tony, I didn't know what to do. They made our lives miserable. Tony's mother and Ella began to cry, begging for forgiveness. It's the devil, Tony. We were wrong. Please forgive us. Tony shook his head. I can't believe my own family would do this. You were supposed to protect and love each other. Tony decided to cut ties with his mother and Ella, unable to forgive their cruelty. He set Linda up to be independent, ensuring she had everything she needed to take care of herself and the twins in his absence. The only family member he kept in touch with was his father, who had remained neutral throughout the ordeal. I'm so sorry, Dad, Tony said, embracing his father. You did what you had to do, son. I'm so proud of you, Mr. Ben replied, his voice filled with pride and sadness. Linda and Tony began the process of rebuilding their lives. They moved to a new city where they could start afresh. Tony poured his energy into his business, and Linda focused on raising her twins, who were growing up so fast. They found a cozy home in a quiet neighborhood. The house had a lovely garden where the children could play, and the community was welcoming. Linda made friends with other mothers, and Tony got involved in local business network. Every morning, Tony would have breakfast with Linda, and they kissed before heading to work. They would talk about their plans for the day and share a moment of togetherness. Tony's heart swelled with pride every time he looked at his family, knowing they had come through so much. Years passed, and Tony and Linda's bond grew together. They faced challenges together, always supporting one another. The twins, Emma and Ethan, blossomed in the loving environment their parents created. Emma had her mother's kindness and her father's determination. She excelled in school and had a natural talent for music. Ethan, on the other hand, was a budding scientist, always curious about how things worked. He would spend hours tampering with gadgets and reading books about space. One evening, as the family sat around the dinner table, Emma shared her latest achievement. Guess what, Mom? Dad, I got first place in the piano competition, she exclaimed, her eyes shining with excitement. That's wonderful, Emma. We are so proud of you, Linda said, beaming with pride. And I built a robot that can fetch the newspapers, Ethan added, equally excited. That's amazing, Ethan. I can't wait to see it in action, Tony said, ruffling his son's hair. Despite the happiness in their new life, Tony couldn't help but reflect on the past. He often thought about his decision to cut ties with his mother and Ella. It was a painful choice, but he knew it was the right one. The betrayal had left deep scars, but it also taught him the importance of protecting those he loved. One day, Tony received a letter from his mother. It was a heartfelt apology filled with regrets and sorrows. She begged for his forgiveness, expressing how much she missed him and the grandchildren. Tony read the letter several times, his emotions in turmoil. He discussed it with Linda, seeking her perspective. "What do you think, Linda? Should I forgive her?" Tony asked, his voice heavy with emotion. "Tony, forgiveness is a personal journey. If you feel it's something you can do, then maybe it's worth considering. But you have to do what's right for you and our family," Linda replied gently. After so much soul searching, Tony decided to meet with his mother. He wanted to give her a chance to make amends and see if there was a possibility of rebuilding their relationship. They met in a quiet cafe, the air thick with unspoken words. Mrs. Ben looked older, her face lined with years of guilt and sorrow. "Tony, thank you for meeting with me," she began, her voice trembling. "I've missed you so much. I am so sorry for everything I did. I was blinded by greed and fear." Tony listened, his heart heavy. "Mom, your actions hurt us deeply, but I believe in second chances. If you're truly sorry, we can try to move forward." Tears streaming down Mrs. Ben's face as she reached out to hold Tony's hand. "Thank you, Tony. I will spend the rest of my life making it up to you and your family." Rebuilding trust wasn't easy, but with time and effort, Tony and his mother began to mend their relationships. She made a sincere effort to get to know Linda and the twins, and gradually, the past wound began to heal. Ella, however, remained estranged. Despite numerous attempts to reach out, she refused to acknowledge her wrongdoing. Tony accepted that some relationships couldn't be salvaged, and he focused on those that brought positivity and love into his life. Tony learned a painful but important lesson about trust and family. He and Linda rebuilt their lives stronger and more united than ever. Tony never forgot the betrayal, but he moved forward, focused on creating a loving and supportive environment for his wife and children. Tony's story have come to an end, and now this is for you, my beautiful viewers. Would you have made the same decisions as Tony to cut ties with your own family if they treated your loved ones this way? What does family loyalty mean to you? Don't forget to share this story to family and friends who might need it, and make sure to subscribe for more stories that keep you on the edge of your seat. Till I see you again in my next story. Goodbye.